Hi, welcome. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you're joining from. We are with Running the Distance Conversations, and today I'm excited to share Hannah Holt story with you all. Hannah has an amazing journey with her running and education, and so let's get started. So welcome, Hannah. Thank you so much for joining today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Hannah, if we could start, where did your journey with dyslexia begin?
My journey with dyslexia started with an email from my daughter's second grade teacher. And in the email, she called my daughter defiant. And that word just like jumped off the page to me because I knew that it wasn't the right word, but I didn't know what the right word was. And I thought, oh my goodness, my daughter is getting a label. And I think children become the labels that we give them. And I knew that we were having trouble at school. So it wasn't surprised to me that they were having conflicts. But in addition to the troubles that we were having, I didn't want to add another trouble to the problems that we were having. And so I went out and um, got in line, as it were, for a private consultation with a psychologist. I wanted to know what the right label was so that we could be tackling the wrong problem and not just adding more problems to the problems that we're having. And the result of that screening ended up with a diagnosis of dyslexia. Um, so that's the first time. And when we got the diagnosis, I was like, oh, reading isn't supposed to be this hard. And it was just kind of this understanding, oh, now I know what we can tackle. And that was really powerful for me.
Yeah, if we can just step into that moment for a second, like as a parent, when you hear something that is trying to define your kid in a way that you know isn't accurate, like how would you what advice would you give a parent in that moment, and what did you experience in feeling that?
I think first of all, you have to trust your instincts, and know that um, yes, it's important to get that outside opinions. And I'm under no illusions that um, my daughter is perfect or that any of my children are perfect. Um, but again, like authenticity of that struggle, I wanted to know what the real problem is because you can't begin to tackle a problem when you're working on the wrong area. And so I would just say to all parents who are maybe experiencing that, I think my child's getting labeled and I think my child's getting labeled in the wrong way, to trust those instincts. And I think we're going to get a little later into like some things that you can do in the conversation, but just start with that moment of, this doesn't feel right. And I don't think I want to stay here. I want to find out what's really going on.
Yeah, I love that about trusting your instincts and your intuition on that, and letting that be the guiding source. I want you to talk about this latest project that you did around dyslexia and trying to bring some awareness to the project, if you wouldn't mind sharing.
Sure, sure. So I've been running marathons for a while now. I started almost as soon as I was out of high school. I think I ran my first marathon like the summer after my freshman year. And so I've been doing it for a while. But I had my sister-in-law was running her first marathon, and I was so excited for her that I signed up to run the marathon too. I was like, oh, I'm going to run this marathon with my sister-in-law to support her. And I called her to tell her, and she's like, that's so great. And I totally want you to come. But I have my own running routine that I like to do. I like to listen to music. I don't want to chat. And so just, FYI, this isn't going to be a bonding through the miles kind of experience. Again, like respecting people's truth, right? Okay. I
For sure.
want you to have your first marathon experience the way that you want to have it. And now that I'm doing this race too, how do I want this to be a fun experience for me too? I'm going to a town where I don't know anyone. It was too close to another race of mine for me to like race it. So I was basically going to be jogging this 26-mile race. And like, okay, that's fun, but how can we make it more fun? And so I thought, I know, I'll run the race in a costume. Maybe I'll dress up like a dinosaur. That could be fun. I wonder if there's a world record for running a marathon dressed as a dinosaur. And so, type Google, and there is. And I thought, I think I could hit that. I think I could hit that race for running a marathon.
I want to pause you for a second because I just love where you take this to, okay, so I'm not going to run with my sister-in-law and we're not going to have this bonding experience, but what else can I do? I mean, just the fact that you're engaging in that self-conversation, I think is amazing. So,
And
but
now we know why my daughter was getting in trouble in school. Yeah, so I thought I want to do this fun thing. Well, while I'm doing something that's a little bit different, why don't I use it as an opportunity to maybe help one of the charities that's a sponsored partner of the St. George Marathon? So I went onto the St. George Marathon website, and there, as an official charity partner of the St. George Marathon, was Reading for Life Southern Utah, whose mission is to help advocate and connect children with dyslexia to resources in the Southern Utah area. And I just immediately, that's the charity for me. That's the charity that I want to work with. So I reached out to them and said, hey, I have this idea. I'm going to run the marathon. I'm thinking about dressing up. What would be the best for your charity? Do you want me to hold a sign? Do you want me to wear a t-shirt? Do you want me to dress in a costume that would reflect your charity? And kind of in those back and forth conversations, that's where we came up with this idea that I would dress up as a book. And also that October 1st, which was the day of the marathon, was the first day of Dyslexia Awareness Month. So it was too perfect. I had to do it.
what is your thought process as all this is aligning up and it's like on dyslexia, the start of Dyslexia Awareness Month?
It just felt meant to be. That I really, this was a passion of mine. Here was an organization that aligned with my passion. Now suddenly I'm not running a race in a city where I don't know anyone. I know these people at the charity. I've got a mission. I've got a purpose. And also, this sounds kind of fun. So it just was all the things that were perfect.
And so as you're picking it's a book now that you're going to be running in, what book did you choose and how did this process develop?
Sure. First thing because I do not sew, I'm not particularly crafty. I just went online and Googled for book costumes and found an off-the-shelf costume and bought it. And then because I was making it official, I submitted all my stuff to Guinness and said, here's what I want to do. And they said, oh, no. Actually, if you're going to go for this record, it has to, one, be an actual book. It can't just, because it was just a generic with a castle and a storybook. They're like, it has to be a real book and it has to go to your knees. And there were these requirements that I had to meet to make it an official record. And so I thought, oh boy. Well, fortunately, I write children's books. And so I just happen to have several high-res images of book covers because they're mine. So I don't have to ask for extra permission. And so I picked the book of mine that is the longest because it had to go to my knees. So that was A History of Underwear with Professor Chicken back there. And then I went to my local Joann's and found the woman at the fabric counter and was like, Fiona, I have to make a costume like this. And I brought my costume. I have to make a costume like this, except for bigger. Can you find me all the things I need to do this? And this very nice woman named Fiona took me around the store. It's like, well, you will need this and you will need this. And helped me get all the fabric and all the things that I needed to make this costume. And then I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, I have to make this costume. So then my mom helped me make the rest of my costume. And so it was a team effort. I did not do this on my own.
Well, did it feel like you were in a natural storybook as you were thinking about what book to pick and where the costume was going to come from, the material, all of these things?
Oh, it was not just, it's a storybook. It was a drama, borderline tragedy, because midway through this process, I also sprained my ankle.
No.
And so it's a month before the marathon. I'm doing the Hood to Coast relay and I'm walking a teammate to their start of their relay at 3:00 in the morning because, it goes around the clock. And I trip on the road and I sprain my ankle. And I think, oh no, oh no, I have this race. And so up until even like the week before the marathon, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do it or not because I did not do all my training. I was resting my ankle so that my ankle would get better and just hoping that it kind of would be okay enough. And also that I wouldn't start limping, that I wouldn't have to drop out of the race. But I put all my stuff in my suitcase and hopped on the airplane and flew to Utah and like went for a 2-mile run the morning before the marathon and thought, I think my ankle is strong enough that I can run 26 miles tomorrow.
You're a true runner, just finding ways to be out there in any way possible. I have to ask, were you able to finish hood to coast even on that ankle?
I had to have a teammate run my last leg for me. And thankfully my last leg was my shortest leg. So
Okay.
I'd done my longest legs and I think it was a 4-mile run that I had to do last of all. And a very nice teammate of mine, shout out to Darrell, who did the last 4 miles for me, added to his run so that our team could finish.
Well, congrats to the team and what a team effort that is. And then it brings us to the day that you're actually running. And what was that experience like?
First of all, the day before the race, we had like a meet and greet in the park where they were doing the kids run for the St. George Marathon. So I met the Reading for Life people, which was wonderful. We'd called and we'd emailed and Zoomed, but this was the chance to meet them. And they're so wonderful, so nice, so helpful with an amazing mission of their organization. And we also got to meet with people in the community and talk with them about dyslexia and the resources that they had in the area. So that was just that alone was a great experience in and of itself. And then the Reading for Life people had put out a press release saying they were doing this to get awareness for dyslexia. And because of that, when I was running the race the next day, a lot of the spectators and a lot of the runners had seen the news stories. And so they're like, there's the book girl. Hey, my brother saw about you in the news. Can I have a picture with you? Or, and if they didn't know, they'd say, oh, what are you doing? And then I could say, I'm running for Dyslexia Awareness Month. What do you know about dyslexia? And then we could have a conversation. And several people said, oh my goodness, I'm going to get my child tested for dyslexia now. Or, oh my goodness, I have been living with dyslexia my whole life. And here are the things that have helped me. And so it was a way to connect in a race that was initially going to be a little bit isolating.
What is that feeling for you as you're knowing that you're doing this thing, you're going for a world record, but you're also impacting people on the most individual levels as they're looking at themselves either as needing to get tested or identifying as someone with dyslexia or has a student or a kid that has dyslexia?
Well, for me, the world record was always just kind of a little bit of like the means to the end, like great and wonderful and cool and happy that I could meet the time that I need to make. But that was really not why I was doing it. I mean, I would have run in a costume if there was no charity. I would have done that anyway. But to do that and then to also have the opportunity to connect with people and to connect with something that I care so deeply about made this an emotional experience, a memorable experience. And I hope, if there's one child out there that gets access to resources that they weren't going to have or gets intervention earlier because they saw my article or because they met me on the day of the marathon, that's my goal. My real goal is that.
It's an amazing goal. What do you take from all this experience with dyslexia and running? What is your like takeaway from all of that?
So I think dyslexia and long distance running have a lot in common in that there's no quick fix for either of them. I mean, having dyslexia is like running a marathon. And sometimes you're running a marathon and you're at mile 5 and you wish you were at mile 18 already. Or sometimes you're at mile 18 and you wish you were done already. But wherever you are, on that journey, whether you're at the starting line or you're really struggling, but the end is in sight, and you almost have the support network and the resources and everything that you need. Like, the best time to start is now. And just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Do the next thing. Try not to think too much about miles and miles ahead. Think about what you can do today. What can you do this week? And then go ahead and have those long range goals. You got to do the planning and the work too. But when I ran my first marathon, a good friend of mine said, you don't under respect a marathon and you don't over respect the marathon. You don't think the marathon is so impossible that you don't do it at all, because it's totally possible and most people can run a marathon. But you also shouldn't under respect it and say, well, because almost anyone can do it, I should just go and do the marathon, because that's a good way to get injured or dehydrated or end up in the hospital too. So you have to do both things. You say, this is a long race. It's going to be hard, but I can do it. And here are the things that I can do to make the journey better.
Yeah. And what are some of those steps as someone like looks at maybe getting into running? Like, what tips would you have for somebody?
Well, first thing you've got to do is you've got to tie your shoes. You gotta put on your shoes and you gotta go and take that first step out the door, and start small. I mean, a good rule for running is like the 10% rule. Never increase your mileage more than 10% in a week, because if you're taking those huge leaps, you're really increasing your risk of injury. And I'd say for dyslexia, it's like the same thing. Start at your local school. See what resources your local school has. I wish someone had told me before I went out and got private testing that you could get testing at your school. I could have used the school psychologist instead of paying money out of my pocket. I could have requested that testing through my school. And maybe your school doesn't have it, or they fight you, or I mean, none of this is easy, right? But that's a good place to start, by just seeing what is available and what is available for free.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm so glad you like touched on this. I love how you parallel the steps of like starting with running and starting with dyslexia work. And we can share some links below to people can always reach out to the International Dyslexia Association Oregon branch for information too, as we're always here to help in any way we can. And I love how you talk about reaching out to your local school first and just seeing what's available, because that's
and thanks for mentioning the International Dyslexia Association, because chances are, even if you do get the testing through your school and you do get a diagnosis, I would be surprised if your school has everything you need for your dyslexic child at your school. The beautiful thing about dyslexia is that it's really common. There are so many people with dyslexia. It's like 20% of the population, at least 10%, and then like 20% of the population have signs of dyslexia. So if everyone who was dyslexic got diagnosed, the special education school does not have enough people there to teach, and maybe we should. And I think there are things we can do there too. But you need your community. You need International Dyslexia Association. You need Decoding Dyslexia to find out what other things you can do to make that next step, or what tutors are available, or what can you do as a parent to help your dyslexic child. You're probably going to need more than the school can do, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's super unfortunate, but such great suggestions by you. And whether it's IDA Oregon or Decoding Dyslexia, these organizations are really geared towards supporting people. And I love that you're bringing awareness, because the idea is if we can connect people to the resources that are available and the information, then hopefully there is a better result for the 10 to 20% of the population. I wanted to ask you though, if I could wave a magic wand here, because you were in the magic shop doing your costume. If we could really take
the magic wand. Give me a magic wand.
What would you do, or what would you like to see within the education system?
Oh, sure. That's a great question. Thank you. I would love to see a ton more resources in early childhood intervention. I would love to see that screening for phonemic awareness, which that's a big word, but it basically means the child's ability to process sounds and recognize things like rhymes. So we think, oh, you're not going to know if your child is dyslexic until third grade, but there are signs in preschool that can put a child at risk for dyslexia. So if we can identify those children early who are going to have those weaknesses that would lead to reading problems, and we can give them that intervention from an early age, we're going to end up with way fewer kids in the special education system who then have to be pulled out of their classes to have their classes disrupted. I mean, that's way worse. And then they're aware, oh no, I'm leaving my classmates to go and get and I also don't know what's going on in the class because I can't keep up. If we can have much more early intervention, that would make me happy. I had a good conversation actually with my high school superintendent the other day, and I think my school district is doing some really good things about teaching general education teachers about dyslexia and giving them some tools that so that they can be more effective teachers for dyslexia, not just dyslexic students, but struggling readers and readers in general. I mean, my school district is like 50% reading proficient, which by the way, is like this, it's a little more than 50%, but about half the kids in our school district are not proficient readers at grade level, which is the state of Oregon generally. If you look at the numbers, half of our kids are not reading proficiently. So 20% have dyslexia, but a lot more than that also are struggling in reading. So again, if you're struggling in reading, you're not alone. There's a lot of people. So yes, we can teach our existing teachers who are in the school districts now how to help those kids better. But you know what else we need? We need those teachers when they're in college to be getting that training in the science of reading, because it does us no good if we're just training the teachers who are in the school systems now. If the next generation of teachers don't have those skills, we're just going to have to keep band-aiding our way through until these kids, and we're not going to improve our reading proficiency statewide. Because the other problem that I was talking about with the superintendent is, so they're having trouble finding subs. They have the program to help the teachers know more about the science of reading, but those teachers have to be pulled out of their classes to receive that teaching. And then a substitute has to come in to cover their class so they can know how to teach their class better. I mean, let's teach them while they're in college. Let's have a standard saying they need this many hours in the science of reading to get a teaching certificate. That's my magic wand I would like to wave, if nothing else.
If I could get you one, I would do it in a heartbeat. The early intervention piece, the teaching teachers when they're going through college versus when they have to like learn it after they're already in the workforce and have a job to do. I mean, your way would be way more efficient and less band-aidy.
I mean, we can hope. There's my magic wand.
Yeah.
And also, I'd like to touch that kids with dyslexia have a lot of great skills too. And so it's not really just about, helping the poor dyslexic kids who are struggling so much. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a struggle and I know the struggle, but there are so many things that they are good at. And it's a shame. And it's a crime, frankly, if we're holding those kids back from recess so they can spend more time, if we're taking them out of their gymnastics or their baseball, because after school now we need to do tutoring time. Those kids need those things that they're good at. They need those things that they're successful at, because frankly, the world needs more than like lawyers and mathematicians too. We need all kinds of workers in our society. And those kids need that time to thrive and play and do those things too. So I'm hopeful that whatever solution we come to, we let those kids build on their strengths rather than constantly pointing out to them what their weaknesses are.
I love what you just said. And I love that it comes from somebody who's in the education field and also an author and has that in their repertoire to also know, like, we need to put people in positions for success, and the gymnastics or the cooking course or whatever it might be where they are thriving is as important as learning the skill set of reading too. So
yeah, 100%.
I always like to ask guests this question: what does running the distance mean to you? And maybe you've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you could elaborate.
Running the distance. I think running the distance is to sound too cliche, is to go that extra mile, right? So if we know that helping kids with dyslexia, this is like the bare minimum that the state requires us to do right now. Or if we know that I'm going to put in the workout and this is like the bare minimum that I have to do to not injure myself, that's great. And that's a good place to start. But I think going the distance is, what can we do to, look further down the road? How can we set up kids in the future to be really, who are dyslexic, to be really successful, so that parents don't have to pay for outside evaluations, that parents don't have to pay for outside tutoring, that they don't have to pay for all these things that really you can only do if you have a certain amount of privilege, right? So that those kids can be happy and successful without having to carry that burden all on their own. Because really, we are so much better together. And I think the same thing is true with running. It's so much easier to go that extra mile if you have a good running buddy to run it with you. And that's why I'm so grateful that for my run, I could partner with Reading for Life Southern Utah, so that we could do that kind of wacky thing, but doing it together brought so much more meaning to my experience and turned, a marathon that could have been like, oh, another one for the books, into really kind of a life-changing experience for me.
Better together. I love that. I love that you have modeled that and that you've connected it to what you're doing and bringing awareness. It's so important. And just thank you for all of your work that you're doing, and congrats on the world record for the costume. And if I will give you the last word, what would you like to leave the audience with?
So I just like to come back to that these things are hard, but they're especially hard when we do try to go it alone. And so don't feel like you have to do it on your own. Reach out to your school, reach out to your neighbors, reach out to the International Dyslexia Association, IDA. Find other parents in your position. Find out, do they need someone on the curriculum board at your school? Maybe that's a spot for you. Maybe you can get trained in tutoring so that you can help more kids find their success. Or maybe you can be a basketball coach and help that kid build on their strengths. So find a way in your community, connect, and finding that connection, you'll lift yourself and you'll lift others with you.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Hannah, for your time. I really appreciate it, and all the wisdom and advice that you've given the audience today.
Hey, thank you, Jared. And thank you so much for all the service and the work that you do for dyslexia as well.
Appreciate it. You have a great afternoon.
You too.